prosperity lesson is all about debt and indebtedness. So I want to talk about debt and how you get into debt and what it means from a magical point of view and how to get out of debt if that's what you want. Most of us want to get out of debt or stay out of debt. So let's not look at debt from a financial perspective. Let's look at it from a magical perspective. So there's two things that tend to cause debt more than anything, and those are resentment and fear. Resentment and fear. So debt is usually a manifestation of resentment and fear. So it's been said that if you can forgive, indebtedness is impossible. If you can truly forgive your grievances, it's impossible for you to maintain indebtedness. And I've noticed that that's pretty much true. But the other thing too is fear. And fear is usually one of the reasons why people get involved in debt to begin with, is that they're afraid that they won't be able to get their needs met. And so they go into debt to try to get their needs met, not realizing what they're doing. And a lot of times when people go into debt, they're trying to do something good, and they just don't know how to get their needs met any better. And so if we can extricate ourselves from the fear and from the resentment, that is the first step in overcoming any kind of debt. So if you notice that you're involved in a lot of debt, if you have a lot of debt, or you have had a lot of debt in the past, and it's a kind of a recurring problem, you're afraid you're going to get back into it, one of the things that you can start off with is by being very, very serious about getting your forgiveness going. So get out a sheet of paper and this is good for you whether or not you have financial debt, but specifically for those of you in financial debt, get out a sheet of paper and be really brutally honest with yourself. Who do I resent? Who am I holding resentments for? And sometimes what you can do is you can trick yourself into it by doing a stream of consciousness kind of thing. So on the top of the sheet of paper, you write out, the person I most resent is, and then you just complete the sentence, even if you don't think it's true. You just you just keep writing. Another person that that I have a lot of resentment for is, another person I'm holding grievances about is, and you just keep writing the first thought that comes to your mind, and some of them may not be true, but you just do it anyway, just to start to regurgitate some of these lists of people, and you'll be surprised how many people you resent. And the thing about resentments is I'm going to teach you something that I learned about passive aggressive behavior. People talk about passive aggressive behavior. Debt is a type of passive aggressive behavior. That's what it is. It's passive aggressive. Now, passive aggressive behavior, it's not that somebody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to be passive aggressive today. People who are passive aggressive don't mean to be passive aggressive. They don't know they're being passive aggressive. They're not trying to be passive aggressive. So pointing out to somebody, you're so passive aggressive, often doesn't help, because they don't know they're passive aggressive, but telling them that they're passive aggressive, usually that comes from a type of passive aggressive tendency on your part. What that does is, either if they're not being passive aggressive, they're annoyed at you because you're saying something that's not true, or if they are being passive aggressive, immediately because you're attacking them, they go on the defense. And so rather than helping this situation, you're reinforcing that passive aggressive behavior. So what passive aggressive behavior is trying to, usually when you're passive aggressive with somebody, it's because you love them. So as grievances start to get collected through your life and through your day, whatever, your conscious mind usually says something like, yeah, but I love them so much. I don't want to resent them. And so you just displace it. You just pretend like you don't have the resentment. You pretend like it's not there because you love them so much and you don't want to resent them. That's coming from a good intention. You're trying not to place a bunch of blame on somebody that you care about. Well, we know what happens when you displace something. It just comes out in other ways. And that's what passive-aggressive behavior is. You're trying to get your needs met, but you don't want to be honest about the fact that you love this person and you resent them and you have a problem. Now, so if you write it all down, if you write it all out, you can forgive them, and you can clean all that up without them even knowing it. You don't even have to involve them in it. You can keep it real private. So you write all these resentments out, and you just start forgiving them, and it's real easy. You can write it out. I forgive so and so completely. If you don't forgive them, you can say I'm willing, or I want to forgive them. I do want to forgive them. You can ask for help from your inner guide or your higher self. Please help me to forgive this person. So a lot of times the resentments that we have that are for people that we really can't stand, those are easy. Those are obvious. But there are little resentments that we've collected along the way for people that we do love that we don't want to look at, because we're afraid that if we look at the resentments, somehow that's going to make us not want to love that person anymore, or somehow put us in trouble with that relationship. And that's just not the case. It's just normal. It's like your car gets dirty when you drive it. The dirt represents a type of resentment. It's nothing against your car, right? It just happens. So sometimes you collect resentments. It's nothing personal about that person or you or anything. You collect a resentment, and so you let go of it. All right. So that's one little way that debt starts to happen, is when we start to collect resentments, and then we don't want to look at them, and we don't want to tell the truth about them. And so our debts are a type of passive aggressive behavior in order to get our attention to the fact that we're holding resentments. So that's one of the first things that you can do, is to look at who you resent. Okay. The next thing you can do is make a list of your fears. The thing I'm afraid of most is. Another thing I'm afraid of is. Another thing I'm afraid of is. And you just do it again. Stream of consciousness writing. Write on a piece of paper. Get them all out. Get as many things as you can out before you'll notice you start repeating things. And after you keep repeating the same fears over and over again, you know that you're probably done for this session. And you just go through the list. Right? And you go through the list, and you call upon your higher self. You call upon that inner guide and say, please take these from me. Please take these fears from me. I no longer want these fears. Now this higher power is always able and willing to remove those fears from us, but cannot take from us that which we are not willing to let go. So be willing and just say, I'm willing to let go of this fear. I'm willing to recognize that this fear isn't real. I'm willing to let go of this fear. I'm willing to be shown something much, much better. Just that in and of itself is enough to get things started. Your willingness is pretty much all that it takes. And that goes for forgiveness too, by the way. Say you have somebody that you really do resent that you don't want to forgive. That's fine. You can just say, I don't want to forgive this person. I can't stand this person. I'm having a real hard time letting go of this resentment, but I'm willing. I'm willing to be shown. I'm willing to let it go. I don't know how, but I'm willing. Okay? So those two things, first and foremost, before you hit anything more practical, you got to get to a daily, I would do this daily until you start seeing movement in towards your debts dissolving themselves. The daily forgiveness and daily letting go of fear. Okay. The next thing that will tend to start to unravel debt before we even start to look at it head on is gratitude. Gratitude, just like it works for many things, it has a special power against debt. So if you are indebted, first and foremost, look at the debts and look at what you bought for the debt that caused you to get in debt, or what you had to pay, or whatever it was that you must have had some sort of exchange. You don't just go into debt without having something in return. So you can start being grateful for the things that you got, or for whatever that debt enabled you to have, be, or do. All right. You can be grateful for the fact that you were able to become indebted so that you could have that thing. And then start being grateful for the fact that the way is now opening for you to easily pay that debt. Do you see how you can use gratitude specifically on the debt and what the debt bought for you to unravel the debt itself? It's very powerful. Now remember, you're probably resenting yourself for getting yourself into debt if you're carrying a lot of debt, or any debt that's uncomfortable. And so make sure that you include yourself when you're doing all that forgiveness stuff. Okay? All right, so let's keep moving here because I got to get going. Okay, now, so once you've taken care of that, so daily gratitude, daily forgiveness, and daily daily freedom from fear. What we want to do next is make a list of who we owe and how much we owe. Remember that card in the tarot, the strength card, is all about facing what you fear. So face the debt head on. Don't run away from it. Don't let it intimidate you. It's just a figure. It's just a figure. So get really clear about who you owe and how much you owe. Now, remember that the best thing to do in order to overcome anything is to face it. And part of facing it is just giving them a phone call. Giving them a phone call or writing them a letter, just acknowledging, I understand I have this debt, and right now this is all I can pay, and therefore I'm going to pay this. And whether or it doesn't matter whether they agree. It doesn't matter whether they say, yeah, this isn't enough, you need to blah, blah, blah. None of that matters. What matters is that you don't go beyond what you can afford, but you give them, even if it's $1, and you just keep making that payment every week or every month, whatever the minimum that you decided that you can do. It doesn't really matter. Don't worry about whether it's going to even pay the interest or whatever. It's that learning how to trust yourself. Again, learning that no matter what, you're going to make what you know that you can afford to make payment, even if the debtor, even if the creditor doesn't think it's enough. That doesn't matter. You're going to make a commitment. This is how much I can afford right now that I know I can afford no matter what, and I'm going to make that payment no matter what. It's not for them. It's for you. Because what you're doing then is you're building up trust with yourself. Another reason why you're indebted is because you have no trust. You go in debt because you don't trust yourself, and you don't trust that the universe can take care of you. So now when you start paying that every single week or every single month, whatever you've committed to yourself to do, you're building that trust back up. And remember that the universe underwrites your efforts. So because the fact that you're doing all of that forgiveness work, all of that freedom from fear work, and all that gratitude, plus you're building this trust, the universe has no choice but to come in and underwrite your efforts. And you're going to notice that there are many different miraculous ways in which your debts start to get cleared much faster than you ever thought possible. The other reason why we get into debt is it's a symptom of disharmony or dissonance in our relationships. Oftentimes, the debt is just a symptom of a deeper disharmony that we're having with either another person or with ourselves. So that's another thing to recognize too, is that oftentimes, like I said, debt is a type of passive aggressive behavior. It's true, and so you want to make sure that you're not walking through your life with a discordant objective. You don't want to walk through your life even unknowingly thinking, where can I sow seeds of discord in this relationship? Where can I sow seeds of discord in this, right? It's that part of the ego mind that says, well, we got to make sure that we sow discord, because that's the only way that the problems will remain and that I can stay in power. That's what the ego wants. And so as we go through our day, if we are mindful of how much discord we are attracted to, how much discord we are involved in fomenting, or how much discord we are willing to put up with, we start to be able to make choices in the moment, even in regards to things that have nothing to do with our debt. They do relate to it, to start to lessen and lessen and lessen our discord. No matter how much you owe, you could owe, $500,000 and think that there's no way. There is a way. You have to recognize that there is a way. There is a way out of all indebtedness, and that way will open to you. But you have to know that that way is there. You have to be willing to be shown that that way is there. If you've already made up your mind that there's no way, it's really hard to get out. So you have to be willing to say, yeah, I know that there's a freedom available to me, and here it comes, and I know I'm on top of it. So the other thing you want to do is, if you're one of those people that tends to talk a lot about things, this is the time to start learning secrecy. There is a type of secrecy that's good for everybody, and that's magical secrecy. Now, we talk about secrecy in other contexts a lot as far as how to give something power. So we don't want to necessarily keep our debts secret in order to give them power. That's not why we want to keep quiet about our debts. It's just that we don't want to make our debts a part of who we are. Hi, my name is so-and-so, and I carry a lot of debt. That's not what you want. You don't want to be, you don't want to personify indebtedness as who you are as a person. So other than very, very specific people, like maybe an accountant or a partner or something like that, you want to keep your debts private. Not secrets, like sick secrets, like you're ashamed of them, but that you don't want to you don't want to elevate them into a major part of who you are, because that's a harder thing to overcome. Because if you identify with, well, I'm so-and-so and I carry a lot of debt, if that's part of your identity, it's much more difficult to overcome debt. So you want to make sure that you're not identifying with debt as who you are. And part of the way to do that is just to not talk about it to people, to keep all of this stuff private. Start looking at how you're using your words every single day. Be very vigilant. If you're carrying a lot of debt, I guarantee you that you're talking about how you can't afford things. You're talking about how money's hard. You're talking about how, oh, I'd love to, but that's too much. Those kinds of words. Just reorient the speech rather than, oh, I could never afford that. Just say, say somebody shows you a great car, and you could, and if your thing is, oh, it's too expensive, I could never afford that. Well, those words are powerful, and they're reinforcing that indebtedness. What you could say instead is, that car is a divine idea, and I have every right to it. And if I decide that I want that, I can make it happen. I can create enough abundance to make that happen if I want it. Right? If you don't want to spend money on something right now, just say that. I don't want to spend money on this right now. Don't say I can't afford it, or that's too expensive, or I'll never be able to have that. Watch what you're saying. And then also watch what you're saying to yourself about your debts. Oh, this is so hard. I'll never get through this. Oh, I'm so stupid for being in debt. How come I'm so stupid? Those kinds of things. Watch your words. When you notice yourself saying that, turn it around. Turn it around. I'm becoming freer and freer with every breath. I am, and you can even, if you're a rosary person, you can say, forgive me my debts as I have forgiven my debtors. One really powerful way of saying that is, prove to me that I have forgiven my debtors. Prove to me that I have forgiven my debtors right now. And when you say things like that, infinite intelligence is listening, and infinite intelligence will start proving it to you that you have forgiven your debtors. Okay? Let's see. When you start noticing, because of your debts, that you start diminishing what you think is possible, start to go the opposite in your imagination. Again, not in your finances. We're not asking you to start living beyond your means again, but in your imagination, start thinking about the opposite of what you're saying to yourself when you say, oh, it's just so hard and there's just never enough money. Start thinking the opposite. Start thinking in terms of, well, what do I really want? If I didn't have to worry about money, what would I be doing? How would that feel? How big could it be? How great could it be? You can even start writing down your visions of what it's going to be like once this debt's cleared up, right? What you're going to be doing, what you're going to be having, all the kinds of stuff you're going to be able to do, right? There's some very powerful ways of thinking about debt once you're at this point now. Once you're doing this kind of work to actually start to make it disappear, and all kinds of miracles can happen. And again, we're not saying that you shouldn't pay your debts, but a lot of times your debts will just disappear. Now, I've known people that have been in really major debt for many years, and what they owe basically is they shouldn't owe, because they've paid in interest about 70 times over how much they originally owed. So they don't really owe anything, even though they do technically. And when they do these things, I've seen people just where the debt just goes free, where the company just forgives the debt. I've seen people have all kinds of little miracles when they do this stuff, or they'll just get a big windfall and they'll be able to pay it all off. It happens where they'll pay it all off and they'll be able to settle for much less than what it was owed. And when they do that, they're able to say, well, can we do that so that my credit score doesn't reflect that, and all kinds of stuff. So what you can do once you've done all of this work, like what we've talked about with the forgiveness and with the fear, the releasing of fear, with the gratitude, watching your speech, doing all of that, what you can do is you can actually say, in addition to doing debt-free spells and psalm spells for debt, you can say things like, I only owe infinite spirit. My only debt is to infinite spirit. Therefore, I can't owe anybody anything. I can't owe a person or an institution anything, because there is no debt in infinite mind. So the only one I owe a debt to is infinite spirit, and I can only pay that debt by living my best life. So therefore, I don't owe anybody anything. There is no way that I can owe anybody anything. Therefore, all of my debts are now dissolving themselves. And you keep saying that to yourself. In addition to all this stuff, that's powerful. That's powerful. When you can start blessing your debts because they're actually showing you something good, then they start to disappear. What are your debts showing you? Your debts are showing you that you want more than what you've been able to have. And you didn't know how to get there. You didn't know how to get there. So you can forgive yourself for that. You can let this stuff go, and you can say, well, going forward, I don't have to give up what I want, but now I know that I can accept the prosperity that is my birthright, that prosperity is infinitely expansive, and that I want for nothing. And there's absolutely nothing that I could righteously desire that is not my right to have. And those kinds of thoughts, you go to sleep with those kinds of thoughts, you wake up with those kinds of thoughts, and you do all of this work that we're talking about. Then when you do things like debt spells, freedom from debt spells and freedom from debt psalms and things like that, those operations can't help but work very, very potently, because you have an infrastructure that you're setting up in your daily life where debt just can't exist anymore, and you'll just start to see that it starts to dissolve itself of its own accord. Thank you so much for being with me today. This is my true pleasure and honor to work with you, and I cannot wait to work with you again. And until that time, blessed be.